Hello, friends. This is Brian Foreman with Campbell University Center for Church and Community, and I am honored and thrilled today to be joined by the Reverend Jack Glasgow at Zebulon Baptist Church. Jack, you've been at Zebulon for a few years now and have seen some things come and go, but probably nothing quite like you're seeing right now. So I'm just curious, before we jump into all of this, what's good in ministry right now?
Well, Brian, one of the things that's really been good for us at Zebulon Baptist is our people are pulling together. They have been very affirming. We've been live streaming since March the 15th. They have enjoyed what we've tried to do. They have engaged in some of the things we're offering in spiritual formation, age group ministries. Their giving has been extraordinary. That's been amazing. Our giving has increased during this period of time. So by and large, what's good is we have a loving, caring congregation that's doing a good job of checking in with one another and trying to stay as engaged as possible in the life of the church.
That is fantastic. And Jack, I think what's really exciting about that is that I've talked to a number of people who are having a really similar experience, but we're all anxious to be back together. And we see that playing out in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different forms. You guys are making some plans as well. And I'm curious what some of the big things that you're having to wrestle with as pastor in the midst of all of that. It's not just how does the church come back, but how does the pastor, how does the staff person, the minister come back from what we've been living in the middle of?
Yeah, I think the most difficult challenge has been to make plans based on the current set of circumstances, and then the circumstances change. For instance, we were really trying to sync our plans with Governor Cooper's plans for re-engaging in North Carolina. And we were looking, as we entered into phase 2, probably a 50-person public gathering, but then that changed and it went downward. But we were also hopeful that churches would remain under the guidelines, and then we were given we're told, well, churches are exempt from having to follow these guidelines. That created a whole new dialogue within the congregation about how soon we should get back to normal, how soon we should begin trying certain things. So you spend a lot of energy trying to put together a plan for, well, here's what we might do. You share it with leaders, and then about the time that you're beginning to feel a sense of consensus that this is the right thing to do, then the world changes. So, and that I think is very difficult. You exert a lot of energy on plans that you're never really able to implement.
Yeah, I worry a lot about the mental health of our congregational leaders, folks who are having to make some of these decisions. I mean, A, it's a pandemic. B, it's not just that, but it's the worry of the spiritual care of our congregants. It's working a different way in a different set of hours that everybody's gotten used to. So what are some of those boundaries that you found have been really important and effective for your own mental and spiritual health?
Well, one of the good things is we're not having as many night meetings, and Zoom meetings are not so fun that people want to have quite as many meetings as we used to have, and they don't last nearly as long. And so one of the things that's been helpful is I'm home more evenings. So I'm eating dinner at a more reasonable time, making sure my wife and I are taking good long walks, and we have rediscovered our rocking chair porch. We are breaking away from media and listening and social media and all of those things, and spending time, just the two of us, just enjoying a beverage on the front porch, rocking at night, and talking for hours. And I think that's been really helpful for me. It has given me the opportunity to recharge a little bit. I feel the stress. I can see it in my face. I feel like I've aged 10 years in the last 2.5 months. But for the most part, trying to stay healthy through exercise, through some quiet time, some reflective time, and just not staying at the office or working all the time.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating is that, for me, I'm working from home. And so I
Yes.
have to be very careful about when do I start work and when do I end work, because it's really easy to work until 6, 7 o'clock and not even think twice about it, especially with it still being light outside. At least if it were
That's
getting
right.
dark early, there would be some stimulus to say it's time to stop.
Yes. Yes. Well, we were we stayed open throughout this, at least from 9 to 1, 3 days a week. But our church has a very aggressive food pantry,
Mm.
benevolence ministry. And so we wanted to keep that going. And so we would come in and work 9 to 1 here at the office. We're able to be very distant from one another. Social distancing was easy, but we were able to keep ministry going in our community.
Mm.
And that was helpful to me. It was nice to be able to come to the office a little bit. So I haven't had any periods of time where I've been away from the office. And as we've gone into phase 2 of the reopening, we're now back to kind of a normal office routine here. Mhm.
So, Jack, I have to ask though, even as the restrictions lift, and you talked about the Zoom meetings, um, do you think your folks will be inclined to continue Zoom meetings in the evenings as opposed to coming together for a finance committee meeting?
I don't. I think that we may have to offer to those who can't come. They know now that if they're on a business trip 500 miles away, the technology exists, and it has always existed for the last several years, that they can be a part of that meeting. So we may be offering it in that way. But our folks really enjoy being together and interacting. And I think we've had some really humorous moments on Zoom with one another, and that's been fun. But I don't think that we're going to want to do all of our meetings remote by any stretch.
Yeah, I think that's one of the differences for rural and urban churches is that when you're driving 30 to 45 minutes to get to a meeting and that same amount of time to get home, some churches are discovering this is a tool they should have been using all along.
Yes, I can understand that.
So I want to circle back to something you said a minute ago, and that was taking a break from media. Um, social media is a big part of our lives. And then it's that also that place where people shout into the void. On some of the platforms, and on other ones they espouse beliefs, and we see all of those things and we hear all of those things. And so I'm wondering what the pressures are on you and your staff as you see some of that, and the dialogue around what we should do as churches. Are our rights under attack? And I don't want to turn this into a political conversation, but all of those questions that come up about church rights and come up about should we be open, shouldn't we be open, how do we trust God in the midst of this if we're not willing to come together? I would love to say that I've seen it all, but I'm pretty sure if I logged onto Facebook right now, I would see something and make myself go, hadn't seen that before.
Oh, that's right. That's difficult. And that difficulty began before the COVID-19 crisis.
Mm-hmm.
We were struggling with, you read your members have disagreements with one another on social media. You hear them or read them say things that they would never say to you in person. And sometimes you're disappointed. Sometimes you enjoy learning their perspective. You can get to know them in ways. They're revealing things to you that they would not reveal to you as their pastor, just passing you here at church. But it's been difficult, and I've needed to make sure that I'm not completely breaking away from social media or the mainstream media, but I've really reduced how much I'm being guided by that, because I need some quiet space. I need some reflective space. And I've learned that I truly am a centrist between extremes, because in all of this, I do hear the concerns of people for their religious liberties. I also have had a great passion for teenagers throughout my ministry. I started here as the youth minister, and I don't think I've ever really given it up completely. I love my teenagers, and I've had meetings with my teenagers to listen to them. And I recognize their need for social interaction here at church, physically and in person, is great. And they are not intrigued by Zoom meetings and technology. This doesn't impress them one bit. So I balance that with then concern for my members who are at high risk, our elderly. And I realized that the minute we open the doors, some of those elderly will be the first to be here. I love one dear lady who shared with me not long ago. She said, "I can't wait to get back to church. I'm just going to hug everybody when I get back." She's probably one of the more compromised in terms of health members of anybody in the church, but that's where she's coming from, and that's what she's trying to say. So you listen to that, you try to find some balance, um, and it's just very difficult to do that. But there are times that I just need to look at some of the conversations going on social media and just say, I need to back away. And I will say, Brian, that blogging has helped me. I've done about 3 or 4 blogs on our website where I was able to really collect my thoughts, write, change things. And I think the people have heard some of my thoughts far better by reading my blogs than if they were reading Facebook posts or Twitter feed.
Yeah, 288 characters doesn't give you a lot of space to
No,
articulate a deep thought, does it?
that's right.
I mean, some people are very gifted at it and they can say a
Yes,
lot with that, but
yes.
I'm not one of them. One of the things that has concerned me the most is seeing people shame each other or attempt to shame. And some of that is around what the church decides to do. I've seen clergy caught up in the middle of that as well. It gives, and it's because they don't necessarily know when to step back, or we get pulled into something that we think is where we can be a peacemaker. And boy, how quickly that unravels.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
You mentioned stepping away from it, but also seeing it in some of your folks. We know that they're saying things they might not say if we were sitting across the table from one another. How do you get a sense of who that person really is the next time you see them? If they say something that makes you tilt your head and think, "Boy, I wish they hadn't said that," but you know them to be this deeply caring, faithful individual, how do you reconcile those two things?
Well, by staying in one congregation through my entire ministry, 43 years in one place, one of the benefits of that is you really do learn the ability to accept people with their flaws and with their gifts, that we're all a mixed bag. And so over a long, long tenure, I'm sure I've said something. Everyone has had to forgive me for something that I've said or done over this time, and I've had to practice the same grace toward them. I think the hardest thing for me this time has been some of my people that I consider kindred spirits, personal friends in ministry over the years, that at times I have felt that even though I know where their hearts are, they're trying to protect people, they want people to be healthy, they don't want selfishness to come to play, and then we end up jeopardizing the health of others. I get that, but sometimes as we're in a church setting and we're listening to everyone and we're trying to decide, are we going to come back slowly? How are we going to do this? You feel like that there's not an understanding for our position, and you do feel like that if you come back at all, if it's quicker than people want, that there is some shaming that goes on and some pretty harsh critique.
Yeah, I mean, the shaming happens on both sides of that.
Absolutely.
When you talk about being firmly entrenched in the center, you take arrows from both directions.
You do.
Which is pretty
Yes.
frustrating. I think we need more folks standing in I can't remember the author's name, but called it the radical center a few years ago,
Yes. Yes.
as opposed to the radical left or right. But especially when you stop and try to give thought to what people are experiencing on both sides of whichever part of this debate. I won't say right or left or front or center, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
the case may be, but people are experiencing all of these things in such different ways. And I think we have to be careful not to generalize them too much,
Yes.
and find ways to minister to them in the midst of that. Because, as you said, talking about your congregants over all of these years, the same thing can be true about somebody. They can say something absolutely stupid on one hand, and especially if you work with teenagers, right? And then something completely profound and caring on the other. And both parts of who they are present. We just have to be
That's right.
enough.
Yes.
So I have one last question for you, and thinking about the folks who will return, thinking about how you guys are moving into all of this. What are you hopeful about? What's sort of the good word, the hope that comes with all of this? What, maybe it's in something that you've learned, maybe it's in something that you've seen that's inspired you, or maybe it's in something that you've read, a particular text. What's that thing that's giving you hope in the midst of all this?
Well, I'm hopeful because our people have expressed that being together matters to them. This the old cliche, absence makes the heart grow fonder. The absence we have had from one another has created I think, a softer fondness for one another and a desire for fellowship that I think is real and genuine. And I hope we build off that. I think we've certainly learned that we can have a digital presence. As a traditional church with worship services on a campus, there are opportunities for us that we have discovered during this time. And those are lessons we'll learn, and I think we'll be a stronger church for it. But for the most part, I like hearing people saying to me, I miss you. My good moment today was an exchange on social media with a dear lady. She and her husband are great members of the church. It's a young family. They have 3 children. Their youngest is a beautiful Down syndrome child that we love. And as I watched him, he was standing and his legs are obviously stronger than the last time I saw him. And so I commented on that. And I said, he's getting stronger. I said, I can't wait to see him. I miss all of you. And when she just, her response back was with lots of hearts, a string of hearts, and then said, we love all of you and we miss you. And I can't wait till we're back together. I'm not sure she would have articulated how important being a part of this church fellowship was for her until she's been away from it for 12 weeks. And now it matters a lot to her, and it matters a lot to me and to all of us.
Yeah, that's a fantastic place to wrap up. It does matter, and that's what we have to keep in mind, is that we have this deep, deep desire to be together.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, that's why so many are in a rush to reconvene. It's also the same reason that so many are in a cautious place, because we want
absolutely
to care for those to whom gathering means so much the next time we are together. So I appreciate the time that you've given us. I appreciate the leadership you've given to Zebulon, and making sure all those people know that they are missed and that they are loved and they are cared for, and that they're providing that back for you as well.
Thank you, Brian.
Special. So thanks again for your time, Jack.
You are most welcome.